So the chapter I had was chapter 5 on how to relate to your fellow graduates when you are enrolled in this program. And Patrick, this is what I'm thinking, and let me know if this is what you're thinking. We have 4 different elements in this chapter. The first being that when you join the program, it's really a competition. Now, the most cynical way of looking at this is to see it as a survival of the fittest, where only if you are like the strongest and the best, you will survive in this training environment. But the key insight here is to actually see it as not to be afraid of failing, and when you do fail, be humble about it and to see that you're really in a unique setting where you can use these key insights from failing to leverage new experiences. The second is that the trainee program is really about you developing and becoming a manager or taking a senior position in the company in the long run. And you will have weaknesses, but use those and know your weaknesses. And one way of doing that is to, as Sophie mentioned before, use this 360-degree feedback system. But not only get feedback, but also make sure that when you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, actually use them. The third is that there are no real guarantees. So make sure that you work with people who complement your skill sets. And even though you are in a trainee program, it's really twofold. So on the one hand, you may get opportunities from elsewhere that you may want to pursue. So still be open to other opportunities that might come across you in the future. But also, as you mentioned, Patrick, there are external factors. So there are uncertainties. You may not be able to be enrolled in this trainee program. External factors can come in, such as the financial crisis, etc. So those were the points. And then your second question was, okay, how can you use this in your first job or in your career? And I think I tried to reflect on what you had written, and I think that on the one hand, I agree that you shouldn't be afraid to fail, for instance. But on the other hand, there are companies out there that have an up or out culture. So I really think it depends on what kind of culture the company has. If you have an up or out culture, for example, then maybe you should be a bit more reluctant to deep diving, taking all of those challenges, and maybe being a bit more careful. But I think in the long run, really 3 points. So don't be afraid to fail. Work with people who complement your skills, and really assess your strengths and weaknesses, and use those insights to become better.
Mm-hmm. What have you got there on the? You've done some sort of model there.
Well, this is my 20 minutes qualitative interpretation, but if the question was how can you use this in your first job and your career, I just wrote okay, how easy is it to implement this in your first job and career, and how attractive is it for you as a person? And one example could be that it's easier to work with people who complement your skills because you can find them in the company, but maybe more difficult to know what your own strengths and weaknesses are and actually use those.
Okay. All right. Any comments, questions to Michaela? Not everybody at once, please. Okay, thank you. And I agree with you with what you're saying there. Of course, it depends on the culture. Definitely, you're completely right there. If you're in a culture where you're expected to deliver from day one, and it's not this, it's how it's framed, right? We were framed that you're here to learn, but you're also being evaluated. In other situations, it could be tougher, I guess. But as a trainee, typically, you have a little bit of slack to learn and fail, and you shouldn't be afraid of it, basically. So. Okay, so I think you summarized it very well. Basically, we talked about constructive competitiveness. I think you touched on that. You have a long career ahead of you. I was extremely impatient myself. Why I want to progress faster? Come on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, actually, I'm a bit surprised that you said you took like 2 weeks to decide basically what all your next 40 years of life would be like.
Yeah, not 2 weeks. I had I took my second option.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
And don't you like regret that you didn't take enough time to decide?
Today I don't regret it. I'm very happy where I am. But if I would have done it again, I would have taken more time. So I guess, yeah, I would advise you to think it through more than I did. Definitely.
Because this is actually the common thing I see around friends of people doing our program. Many people tend to rush quite quickly.
Yeah.
They want to start directly day one when they finish school to start with a fixed position or something. And I don't know, just.
It's important that you get your first job after you don't want to have a few months there where you don't have a job or a year, because then you end up being a lost generation. So if you have choices, and many of you are in a situation where you can probably choose a little bit. You got double degrees, and you're probably in a situation where you can choose a little bit more. If I was lazy. I must say, as a student, I was lazy. I didn't apply to that many programs. I applied to a few things, and I ended up at this interview because it was a SEMS corporate partner, and they would pay the flight ticket to Warsaw for if I got the interview. That's the true story. That's how I was as a student, and many of my, some of my friends were more like, okay, I want to do exactly this. That's also dangerous because if another opportunity shows itself, no, I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, here's another great opportunity. Why not take it, right? Of course, it's a balance as well. My advice would be I would have done a bit more research and really thought through a little bit more what I really wanted before I did. Not saying that I didn't think about it at all. I mean, I moved to England to work in a build center, and of course I thought about that before going there. Thank you for that. So group work is really it's an opportunity to use your own skills and use the skills of the group. Many times we would have some of the graduates were really good. They could do it on their own, and they would almost do it on their own. It just doesn't reflect very well when you do that, because if you want to be an executive, you can't do everything on your own. You've got to delegate, you've got to involve, and you've got to inspire people. So that's important. Take the opportunity to manage and lead, but do so with humility. Yeah.
I just want to bring you back quickly to the last question. When you chose the program, did you follow the ASEC?
Can I ask you this? Is this
Yes.
is this your idea, or is it?
It's well established from an hour ago. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well established. Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't. That's my straight answer to that question. Yeah. And then listen more than you speak. Not all your colleagues will last the distance. And we had, some colleagues will not last the distance, and that happens. Some people cannot take the pressure of the situation where you're going to go through. And some people might not actually hack it, and maybe they don't have completely what it takes. And then all graduates are not born equal. Some have double degrees, like you guys. They hired a lot of SEM students to our program, and the other students felt a little bit, we got the SEMS crowd and then the other people. people have different country background or specialties. So just you got to live with that basically. And there's no guarantee of a job after the trainee program. It definitely wasn't in our situation. And the last year, there was no guarantee of that. Everybody was offered something, but not really kind of what you might have wanted. And then here's just some advice on group work, which I have found very useful. And that is to just write down on a flip chart with the group, because so many times people have different ideas, they've understood the task differently. Write down really clearly what is the goal, what is it we're supposed to achieve in this group work, and make sure that everybody has clearly understood it, maybe even repeated it. That's a huge problem in a lot of group work and why it fails, because people weren't aligned on where we were going. It's very, very basic, but it happens all the time. And then the second one is to take a quick inventory of skills and personalities. Start with yourself. I'm good at this. And maybe here are some negative sides of me. I might be coming across as overbearing. Let me know if that happens. It shows some humility. Mention both positive and negatives. You're really taking a leadership position by doing this. And it's just a simple method. And the last thing is summarize. Okay, group, where are we now as a group? All right, what have we agreed? Where are we now? Okay, we're here, here, and here. And it just opens up people's minds and gets everybody on the same page. So that's kind of my three key advice on how to do it. And then, of course, you can always do it that way.